Gentlemen, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome to Superstar Speakers the heavyweight House of Pain, Stixx. How you doing, man?
How you doing, Rob? I'm okay, man.
I'm happy now.
Cool little video. You put that together yourself, or?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Yeah. You got Kevin Owens killing me onto a chair. Brought back a nice memory.
I'm surprised you can remember it. That was a wallop. Well, I knew that was one of your favourite matches. I knew that was something that you really enjoyed. So I thought we have to put that in, don't we?
Yeah. Funny enough, I actually spoke about this online a few weeks ago. It wasn't only just one of my favourite matches. At the time, I'm not sure if it's still the case. At the time, he used to do these video diaries when he went home every weekend about what he'd been up to that weekend. And he actually said that it was one of his favorite matches as well. And I took that as a hell of a compliment, considering even up to that point, the kind of guys that he had been wrestling. Of course, now, you know, since he's gone to bigger places, he's probably had far more enjoyable matches, you know, but
you've probably slipped from first to fifth. Do you know what I mean? He's probably still in the top.
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, we did two, and we ended it at one apiece. And I kept tweeting him saying, you know, don't make me jump the barrier at Raw for round 3.
Right.
He's a great guy. He was a really great guy. He was, you know, when you find someone who you've never met before,
yes,
that comes from somewhere completely different and is so much like you, it's crazy. You know, we talked through the match in like 3 minutes. We were finishing each other's sentences and coming up with the same ideas and stuff like that. It was literally like talking to myself, you know, and I always found that really strange, considering, you know, we just met each other and never wrestled before, and we lived in different countries, you know.
Yeah, two very different upbringings with regards to wrestling as well, surely. Like his path to the top.
I don't know. I mean, I honestly think the only difference was the countries.
Okay.
You know, because I mean, before he got to the level he was at, I mean, when he came over, he was essentially the Ring of Honor kingpin, you know, which on the indies at that point was the highest level you could get before you move on to TNA or WWE.
Yeah.
And then from my perspective, you know, since 2002, I had done more in this country, what most people would consider the indies, you know, compared to the kind of touring family circuit like All Star or LDN or Mega Slam or anything like that, who kind of go all over the country. So I would actually say we've had pretty similar upbringings. And when we wrestled, I know Ring of Honor, you know, on a worldwide stage might be considered bigger than, you know, even the biggest indie in this country, other than say Progress, you know, but I almost felt like we were on the same level, you know. We were wrestling around the same length of time. You know, we were at the same level. We're just from different countries. You know, maybe that's why we had such of the same mentality when it came to what we were trying to produce. You know, in the matches. You know, it's really great though.
That's a great little story. What I want to do, I want to go back to the beginning, though, Stixx, with you, because there's going to be some of our viewers here that well, yeah. But some of our viewers here, Superstar Speakers, are just dipping their toe in the water of professional wrestling. So I want to know, like, when did you first know you were going to go and become a professional wrestler? And how did you go from, like, I'm going to do this to being a full-time pro wrestler?
Okay.
It's not an easy transition.
Well, I can say from when I was about 8, I wanted to be a wrestler.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I get messages even today from people that I used to go to school with, mainly secondary school. You know, they'll be my friends on social media, and they'll see me put a picture up. And every now and then I'll get a message or a comment saying, "My God, I can't believe you actually did it." Right? Because from the time I was at primary school all the way through secondary school, all I would say was, "I want to be a wrestler. I want to be a wrestler." I was into my wrestling. The last few years of secondary school was the Attitude Era, so wrestling was huge. Okay, even in this country, even the people that didn't watch it before were suddenly fans. And so I always wanted to do it, but I mean, let's be honest. Who, when you're 10 years old and you say you want to do something, who actually ends up doing it?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I've always been quite proud, that I kind of said I was going to do it, and by hook or by crook, I ended up doing it. And I mean, I started in 2001, so it's been 19 years. Started training. I went to a school in Kent because I used to live in London. I'm in Nottingham now, but I used to live in London. And back then, the world of wrestling in this country anyway was a far different place to what it is now. There was probably 2, maybe 3 wrestling schools, in the entire country. And luckily we have one in Kent. Went down there a couple of times, didn't really like the atmosphere much, but then strangely a girl called Sheila came to work at a place I used to work at, just an old like a phone warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And her cousin was a guy called Jamie Clubb, who at the time ran EWW, Extreme World Warfare they were called, down on the south coast, like Hastings way. And they knew a team called the New Breed, who wrestle as Ash and Curve. Ash runs a wrestling school now in Hertford way. So I got their number, and they told me that Alex Shane, the show stealer, was starting a wrestling school in Finsbury Park at the leisure centre, and that was literally 2 towns over. So suddenly this 2-hour trip to Kent every Sunday morning became a half an hour trip down the road, and there was no ring, it was all on judo mats. We had one crash mat. The school lasted probably about 9 months. I was there on the first day. I would go every Sunday, and then me and my friend Tom at the time used to end up going to Saturdays, which was the children's class, because a wrestler called Ross, who wrestles as RJ Singh now, who, as you know, is one of my best friends in the business. Yeah. He used to work on Sundays, but he really wanted to train. So Alex said, "Okay, we'll come along to the kids' class." And he asked me and Tom to come along to the kids' class too, so that he had someone to train with. So we ended up getting double the amount of training. Okay, but the thing is, even without a ring, okay, and a lot of wrestling schools nowadays have the full setup, the rings, the mat, the multiple crash mats. Even without a ring, there was absolutely nowhere else I'd rather have been, okay, on my Saturdays and my Sundays. Okay, as far as I was concerned, I was training, and I was already living the dream. Okay, because sure, I dreamt of kind of making it to WWE, etc. But this was the starting point to the dream. So yeah, like going out on Saturday and Friday and Saturday night just became a thing of the past, because I knew I had to get up early, and go training.
But what was the wrestling scene like back then? Because I've never made any secret of the fact on Superstar Speakers, I spent a lot of time in the world of wrestling, but I began 2008. What was the scene like in 2001? Like, because in 2008 it was pretty spare, but in 2001 was it? What was your?
Okay.
The career path.
2001, if you remember, the wrestling world itself was changing quite a bit. For years you had two huge companies, WWF and WCW, kind of colliding, and then over here you had this alternate company called ECW, who gave you a different kind of product for more diehard, hardcore fans. And in 2001, two of those companies essentially went out of business. So not only now in this country, you've got people really wanting this product that's directed at diehard, hardcore wrestling fans,
Okay.
And maybe about a year before, a company called the FWA had started up, and it was different to what was around in the UK scene at the time. The UK scene was coming out of what many people call the dark ages. Ever since World of Sport got taken off ITV in 1988, sorry. British wrestling was always still there, but a lot of the time no one knew it was still there, and the shows were still going on, directed at families, and they were still getting crowds, just nowhere near the crowds they were getting, back in the golden days. And all of a sudden, this FWA company comes along and basically gives you more of an ECW product, And at the time, they were the only ones doing it. They were running shows in Portsmouth, and they started doing them in Broxbourne in Hertfordshire. And you had people from Scotland and Preston and Doncaster, like all up north wrestling fans, traveling down the country specifically for these shows. And it really did become like a cult company, and it really kicked off what a lot of people call like the new generation of promotions in this country, because from there, companies like the current IPW, Rev Pro, 1PW in Doncaster. Okay, there's so many companies that basically used the model that the FWA started. But unfortunately, because of that, say 1PW in Doncaster, now you've got shows in Doncaster. So those people in Preston don't have to travel to Broxbourne anymore, okay, to get their kind of wrestling fix. They only have to travel half the way. Maybe there was a company right on the south coast, and now those fans don't have to travel up, okay, to see this product because they've got a more local product, okay. So unfortunately, the FWA became a victim of its own success, because other people saw why it was a success and started to emulate it, But all the while in the background, you've got these kind of touring family shows that are more like a show in the box, okay, in a different town every night in front of a different crowd, more of like a kind of family friendly product, okay. And those companies will always be there, because
it's holiday park wrestling, isn't it? Effectively, a different family every night you go on holiday.
Yeah, well, it's like it's like the theatre. If they just, in London, you can risk being in the same venue for 3 months, and the crowd will come to you. But most stand-up comedians or bands, they're in a different town every night in front of a different crowd. It's what keeps their tour going, but it also makes them a better performer because they learn how to perform in front of those different crowds. So that is the real merit of joining like a touring company, as a wrestler. But then at the same time, you always want to do those shows where the people already recognize you, okay, because they're the diehard fans and it's this specific venue that you do the shows at. So you kind of attack it from both ends and you get the best of both worlds, which is pretty much what I had. Because you take Brian Dixon, for example, in this country, has been promoting 50 years, all over the country. I always had a good relationship with Brian, to the point where if I ever emailed him or called him and said, you know, do you have any work going? He would always shoot me a few dates, you know. I think he liked, you know, the way I looked, you know, like a big imposing guy. He liked to use me as the bad guy, you know, so that's fine. Okay. So I always had those shows, but then at the same time, I always found it fun to wrestle in front of those crowds that followed a particular product, because you could really kind of mess with them a little more. Okay. And maybe get a little bit more creative in front of fans like that. Okay. Because they're a bit more diehard, they actually want more from their wrestling, you know. So I kind of had it, you know, the best of both worlds coming through. And maybe, I mean, I think a lot of other wrestlers had loads more of this or loads more of this. You know, I was kind of in the middle, and I never picked sides.
See, I was always the other way around. I was only ever long-term storyline shows, and I used to love the idea of like in jokes and kind of playing on the image that people had of me, almost. You know what I mean? Like, this is what people think of me, it's what they expect of me. Let's play with it a little bit and wind them up. Which I always enjoyed that.
That's fine. I mean, I think the main company for me, you know, in that sense, was probably Southside Wrestling. I was there from probably the end of the first year that they were active, all the way through to the end. You know, as you know, I main evented the very last show that they put on. You know, and I started as a heel, a bad guy, and then I went to being a good guy. And then I was in a good guy tag team, and then I took that break and I came back as a bad guy. You know, so you know, I've really grown with those fans, you know, and it got to the point where I think I was a bad guy, but a lot of them had seen everything that I'd done before, and they booed me because it was part of the show to boo me. But a lot of them didn't really want to boo me, you know.
No.
Yeah.
Like length of service, you become one of them. It's like a tribe, isn't it? It's like, well, he's one of us. He's been here for so long. Like,
yeah. I mean, I kind of liken it to bands. You know, when bands start and they're small, you know, and they're doing those tiny little clubs, you know, and they've got that really diehard fan base that follow them everywhere, you know, and then they get a slightly bit bigger and they start doing bigger venues, and fans turn up to watch them that weren't with them from the beginning, you know, and those people at the beginning are looking at those fans going, huh, newbies, you know. Like, we're the diehard lot. Because we were there.
Saying wrestling fans aren't inclusive, are you, Stixx?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think it's part of the package. I think some wrestling fans want to follow a company that they feel is theirs.
Yeah.
You know, and then when it gets too big, it's like when people say bands sell out, you know. It's like, well, they sold out. They just made a good song and more people liked it. You know, how is that selling out? You know, surely you want this band to make a life for themselves, you know, make some money, you know, but God forbid, you know, you're not our band anymore.
And the other side of that is everyone who complains about it probably would sell out given half a chance.
Yeah,
because
no, absolutely. I mean, it's almost like they get knocked for being successful, you know, but you know, some people are like that.
Right, I'm going to throw a couple of questions to you, Stixx, from the people watching. This is Chris Campbell, and he says, I saw Stixx at an event in Leicester. It was a show with Bret Hart, meet and greet. Stixx was the main event and finished with a sharpshooter. I wondered if Bret gave him any advice, or did Stixx ask Bret if he could use the sharpshooter? And that's from Chris.
You know what? I was actually quite sad that day. I think the event he's talking about was the St. George's show.
Yeah, LCW Super Show, wasn't it?
I think it was either that one or the follow-up, the one that was called St. George's Day. It was in the
it
same.
might have been. Oh, it might have been. Sorry, I beg your pardon. St George's Day. Yeah, tell a
Yeah,
lie.
because it was in the same venue, and I know Brett was there as a special guest. And
Yes.
the main event of the show originally was supposed to be Jack Jester against Grado. And I don't know what happened with Grado, but Grado couldn't make it. So they put me in his place. I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks beforehand. And they started billing the show as England versus Scotland, on St. George's Day. And I was like, okay, cool. That would go down well. Jack Jester's a hell of a talent, and he'll be the bad guy. He'll happily play the bad guy in that kind of environment. So I remember seeing that Bret Hart was going to be there, and Bret is without question, my number one of all time favorite.
Oh.
Even from when I was 8 years old, watching wrestling, Bret was always my favorite. When I became a wrestler, he became my favorite for very different reasons. As a kid, I just, I liked him. Okay. He was my favorite. I was a fan. And then when I became a wrestler, I realized just how good he was, So I actually started using the sharpshooter in my matches, called it the Stixx shooter, just as a little tip of the hat, to my idol. And then I thought, well, if Bret's going to be there, what better way to win the match, But when Bret turned up, he was actually quite ill.
Yeah.
That day, and he was quite jet lagged. I remember he was tired, and he actually looked quite frail. And the idea at the beginning of the show was supposed to be an angle where Bret was going to go out, and then Jack Jester was going to interfere in the promo, and then I was going to save Bret, and then later on in the show, Bret was going to help me win.
Nice.
And when I heard that plan, I was like, man, I can retire right there. Okay, that's second only to wrestling him. Okay, or teaming with him. Just doing anything with your idol. Okay, is always going to get a big pop from me. But because he was so ill, because he was so tired, they didn't do that idea, and I was a bit kind of bummed out about that, because obviously, when am I going to get that chance again? But it was still nice to meet him. More importantly, meet him on that level, because I remember maybe 11, I went to a signing from Bret to get my T-shirt signed in Wood Green in London, and I waited for probably about 2 hours, and ended up talking to him for about 15 seconds, whilst I got my T-shirt signed with all the other 11-year-olds. But having him backstage and me being backstage as a worker and as a performer, that's when you kind of feel like you've done all right. You know what I mean? Like, you went from here being a little kid fan to your idol, and now you're sharing a locker room together. It was still a very, very cool moment. But I actually, I can't actually remember if I actually asked him if I could use it. But I can definitely tell you that because he was on the show and I used it anyway, I probably used it, for that very reason, but I absolutely loved that show. I thought it was a hell of a time, really enjoyable.
I hope that answers your question, Chris. Richard Parker has been on. He's watching. So hello, Richard. He says, hey, guys, hope you're well. With the emergence of WWE UK and British wrestlers going to the likes of AEW, besides yourself, who do you think Stixx, or who does Stixx feel are the best unsigned guys in the UK currently?
Oh, that is a tricky question, because a lot of the talent that I would put forward now over the last couple of months have had real success like elsewhere. Like Gabriel Kidd obviously has moved to Japan. Big Lucas Still has started over in All Japan. You know, that was a shock. I didn't even know he was going. I would say, I mean, are we including the world of sport guys in this? Because obviously they, yeah, I mean,
why not? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they had a lot of national attention, you know, when the series was running. But I would say Rampage Brown or Nathan Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, the irony is both of them are completely different to each other, kind of personality-wise, stylistically. But they could both go to any company tomorrow and make a mark, you know. And that's why it was such a shame that the world of sport stuff didn't take off the way everyone hoped, because guys like Nathan and guys like Rampage would have kind of finally been seen, you know, by that huge audience that they deserve to be seen by. I mean, they're the current guys, you know, that should be signed somewhere. But there's a whole load of up and coming guys, you know, that maybe don't jump in front of Nathan or Rampage, but they're kind of simmering just underneath. You know what I mean?
I've always had Nathan Cruz pegged as a future star. From the moment I met him, which is probably, 5-6 years ago, I've always thought, this guy has got it. He looks like a star. He carries himself like a star. He's an incredibly talented wrestler. And yet, for whatever reason, the stars just aren't aligning for him.
Yeah. I think he's... I mean, I know Nathan quite well. You know, we're not like super best friends. We've got our own kind of best friends. But whenever we run into each other backstage, we're all, you know, pretty close. You know, I think it all stems from he did his first ever kind of big match with me. When he first broke in, he was wrestling for maybe 2 years on some really small shows, and I went over and did a show in Hull for a company called Real Deal Wrestling. I believe it was 2007, maybe 2008, and I got introduced to my opponent that night. And at the time, I was like known as, you know, big, bad, mean Stixx, you know, like playing the bully character. And I was told that I was working with a local lad, okay, who was from Hull, okay, and they wanted to do this match where, you know, he's the local hometown boy, you know, can he defeat the mean bully, you know. I was like, yeah, cool, you know, I'm sure it'll go down well. And I got there and it was Nathan, you know. I don't think we'd actually ever met before that time. And, you know, 4 years after that, you know, we wrestled again in exactly the same venue under a different promotions banner. You know, both of us were 4 years better than what we were before. But even back then, you know, I had more experience than him. So I was kind of helping him out in the match, you know, to create this big moment for him as the hometown boy. I believe it was the first time he'd done a match in his hometown as well.
Wow.
And I think that was always a very big moment, you know, that would always stay with us, you know, even if we hadn't seen each other for years, we'd run into each other and there'd still be that connection there, stemming all the way back, you know, to that match. And it was so good. Like for maybe 5 years after, like I said, we went back to the same venue, did it in front of maybe 4 times the amount of people, you know, and we absolutely tore the house down that night. You know, it was a very special moment, that show.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Our pal Benji Smith is watching. He said Joseph Connors mentioned him the other day, but what is Stixx's views on Adam Maxted as a future big name in pro wrestling?
Well, I just mentioned Nathan Cruz and Rampage Brown and said there was a
Yeah.
whole load of people that maybe weren't up there with those two, but were very close, kind of simmering just underneath. Adam would actually be number one on the simmering list, so to speak. For the life of me, I can't understand why WWE haven't picked him up. The guy looks like a star. He wrestles like a star, but he is the most humble person you will ever meet. Every time he gets backstage, anything for me, any kind of improvements. What could I do differently here? Was this okay? And it takes a real special kind of person to have all of that potential, and not get a ridiculously big head because of it, and still, even years into it, still asking questions and still wanting to get better. That is that's the thing you look for in people that will make it eventually. Okay, that drive to constantly get better and constantly have a better match and work harder and look better, and perform better. Some of us, some people just kind of, you ride the wave. You can do the job, so you just go out there, you do it, you have fun, okay, but you're not overly concerned about any little mistakes you might make, or whether you have the best match on the card or anything like that. You do get those people, and they are as valuable, okay, but they're probably not the ones that are going to go the furthest, okay, because they don't have that drive in them, okay, to improve. But Adam's awesome. He can jump higher than anyone I've ever met. It's like he's got springs in his shoes. But yeah, Adam Maxted's fantastic. I can't actually say enough good words about him. And the irony is, I actually hated him originally.
Really?
Yeah. This is the epitome of don't judge a book by its cover. Because beginning of 2016, I took 15 months out. Okay. And that was just when he was coming in. Okay. So before I left for those 15 months, I hadn't actually interacted with him that much. Okay. If at all. Pass hello, I didn't actually know a lot about him. But then when I come back 15 months later, Adam Maxted's like this up and coming star, one to watch. And literally every person I'd spoken to is, oh, Adam's great. Adam's really, really humble. He's really cool. But then I'd look at him and think, so arrogant. Yeah.
You weren't alone in that, to be fair. Yeah, you weren't alone in that, were you?
It was completely on me, okay? Maybe it was because I'd been around wrestling for a long time, and I'd seen people like that come along, and they get backstage and they ask the right questions, but they don't ask the right questions because they actually want to know the answers. They ask the right questions because they think that's what they should do. You know what I mean? And you look the way you look, and you're just like, oh, I bet he stands in front of the mirror every day for like half an hour, admiring himself. I hate people like that. And, the year I came back, I went on the Butlins holiday camps with NGW, and he was on a lot of those shows, and we spent a lot of time together. And after about 2 days, I just went, I was so wrong. I think I actually mentioned it to him as well. I said, I'm really sorry, Adam. Like, I really misjudged you when I first met you. But
I can imagine he was perfectly humble and kind about it as well. Yeah, weren't even bothered.
The thing is as well, though, I get it a lot, because of the way I look and because of the size I am. People think that if they talk to me, I'm going to rip their head off. If they've never met me before, you know. And then when you talk to me, you know, don't get me wrong, you annoy me, I'll rip your head off. But you know, most of the time, it's so hard to annoy me and even get me out of chill mode. You know that a lot of people are surprised by that. You know, so again, people don't judge a book by its cover.
That's the perfect analogy for wrestling, to be fair. Like, it is that melting pot of all different shapes and styles and sizes that all just come together to put this wonderful thing on. So that's a perfect analogy.
Well, the thing is, there's nothing I hate in wrestling more than what we call cookie cutter. You know, that's wrestlers who look the same, who wrestle the same, who dress the same. Okay, wrestling more than anything else, okay, should be likened to the circus. You know, the circus isn't one man juggling for an hour. You know, you get bored of that.
Yep.
You know, the juggler's there for 10 minutes, then you get the trapeze artist for 10 minutes, then you get the magicians for 10 minutes, and then you get the crazy motorcycle riders for 10 minutes, you know. And when, you know, before you're even bored with one thing, you get something else. You know, that to me is the perfect kind of wrestling show. And if everyone looked the same and wrestled the same, there'd be no variety, you know. So you put me and Adam Maxted next to each other, we couldn't look any more different, you know. But yet, you know, you put us in the ring together, and I'll bring my stuff and he'll bring his stuff, and it's the mix that makes it interesting, you know. But then you put someone like Nathan Cruz in with Adam Maxted, and you know they're kind of coming from more similar styles, but they'll give you something completely different, you know.
Well, this brings us nicely to one of the main reasons that I wanted to get you on, because I want to talk about the House of Pain School in Nottingham. So for those that don't know, that's your training school. It's in the heart of Nottingham. It has a very, very strong reputation, if you don't mind me saying, for churning out good quality wrestlers with a good attitude towards professional wrestling. So to start off with, how did the House of Pain School come about? And then I want to follow that on with, what is it you're looking for in a potential professional wrestler?
Okay. Well, firstly, thank you for the compliment. It's something I'm extremely proud of.
Yeah.
You know, I say without ego that, you know, the school is known for producing really good talent. I moved to Nottingham at the end of 2004.
Okay.
Because I did a show in Nottingham. When I lived in London, I came up and did a show in Nottingham, and I met a girl who was training at the local school in Nottingham. Okay, and I knew one of the other trainees, so he introduced me to her. Okay, we ended up seeing each other, and it got to the point in the relationship where one of us had to move. You know, neither of us drove, so it was really hard with me wrestling at the weekends. Okay, one of us had to move, and it ended up being me. So I moved to Nottingham, and every Sunday I would go along to the wrestling school and help out. It was under the NBW name, Norton British Wrestling at the time, and the classes were taken by a wrestler called Keith Myatt, who I actually call Dad. Because he probably looks like me in about 20 years. And I would just help out, you know, and Keith is from Stoke, so he'd have to drive over every weekend. And it got to the point where they had some really good students there, you know, some really eager students. So I went to Keith and I asked, because I was local to Nottingham, I asked if he would have a problem with me running a midweek class on a Wednesday night, you know, by invite only for maybe the better students. Okay.
Yeah.
Almost like an advanced class, you know. So that went on for a few months. And then Keith just stopped being able to come over.
Oh, have I lost you? Hang on. We seem to have lost Stixx. He's just frozen. Bear with me. Just going to quickly refresh this, guys. Stay tuned. No, we seem to have lost Stixx just in the middle of what was the entire point of where I was going with this conversation.